Okay. So, thank you, Joe. I'll give that back to you. I've got the bead on. I think the bead just adds a little pizzazz to the fly, but the red and the green also make a good looking little fly. You know, we want to weight this because we want this fly to hang in that globe, and I'm going to put some 20/100 lead on, and I will put maybe a few more wraps than I normally would. I'll probably put maybe 12 wraps, because I do that for a couple of reasons. One, I want it to be heavy enough that it's going to hang really well. And notice I'm not sliding that all the way to the bead head. I'm leaving enough room that I can attach something at the rear near the bend, but I'm leaving a little space here, and I'm doing that on purpose. When it comes time to hang these, you'll probably find if you put 12, 13 wraps on, you'll probably find that just back about where the point of that is a good place to start hanging the little fly. You get it too far forward and it'll drop down toward the back end. You get it too, you'll want it balanced so that the fly is kind of hanging level inside the globe. So let's see, what am I going to use here? I'm going to use some white thread. Choice of thread, if you have a red body, it would probably behoove you, if you have red, to use red thread, because when you tie everything off, where you tie it off up behind the bead, that thread may show. If you don't have the right color, if you have a permanent marker that's green, red, that will sometimes cover a multitude of mistakes. So I'm going to get my thread base going back here, make sure I've got my thread trapped, and then we're going to go forward. I'm going to trap that in front of and behind the lead, and then I'm going to let my lead or my thread hang, get rid of my tag end. Now, if you remember last week, there's no difference. These are the same steps. The only thing that's different is you got a bead head here. If I am fishing pretty fast water, even on my woolies, I will put a bead head on. In fact, I usually will put on a tungsten bead head because it's a little bit heavier than regular lead and it will drop it a little bit faster. So I'm going to use a red marabou tail, and I've got a piece of some green yarn I found someplace. I'm going to use that for the body. So I've got my marabou here. Remember last week, I'm not going to need all of that. I'm going to get rid of some of that. It's just going to make my tie-in a little bit more bulky. And remember last week, how long should the tail be? Who remembers? Yeah, about the length of the hook shaft, whatever that equates to for you. So I'm going to, if you make it too long, it's not going to hang in your ornament very well. It'll stick out and it'll hang on the side. So I've got that. That's about the length of my hook shank. I'm going to cut this off carefully on top. Get rid of that. Got most of it. And make a couple of extra insurance wraps. Okay. Now, because I've got a red tail, I am going to use the pearl flashabou. And last week we made sure we had two ends that were pretty close to each other. And I want that to extend maybe just a little bit past the tail. And I'm going to line that up facing me. Get that attached so it's going to be on the side. And then I'm going to lift that over and do the same thing to the other side. And then I'm going to trim so they're about the same size, same length. And make sure I got that attached good. And this one has slipped down a little bit, but you can adjust them now. Okay? And remember, the last thing we wrap is forward is the first thing we tie on. So I've got some white hackle here. I've got a lot more than I need. I'm going to strip some of this off. And naturally, I left my hackle plier in my little kit here. I'm going to get it out before I get going too far. If you remember, we took the small end of the hackle, and I'm going to grab that tip. I'm going to try to gently fold those hackle barbs back, kind of get them started. And then I've got this flat tip. That's what I'm going to tie on, and I'm going to try to leave a little bit of that flat tip for me to start my wrap with. Okay? And then the last thing I'm going to be tying on is my body. This is, I don't know where I got this. I think this is called sparkle yarn. Now I found a piece of this sparkle yarn that's green. I lay that over the hook shank to give the hook shank a bit more body, because this stuff is not very thick, and that gives me a little bit more volume to the body. And then I'm going to half hitch and get my my bobbin out of the way, which I forgot to hook up. And then we're ready to wrap the body. So I'm going to just wrap that. If the marabou gets in your way, kind of wet it a little bit. It'll get it out of your way. I'm going to try to make my body nice and even. I'm going to get it up toward the bead. And if you forget to attach the hook in your vise, that is what happens.
Oh, that's new.
Oh.
That's a new one.
Not in the book.
That's not in the book.
Oh, man, I can't believe I did that. Well, I can believe I did that, but I'm embarrassed that I did that. All right. I'm just going to bring that over and drop it 2 or 3 times. And I want to cinch that down because I want to trim that. This is the one time that you can very easily trim your thread. If it hangs up a little bit high, when you go to trim that, that can ruin your day. I'm going to half hitch that, get that out of the way. And I'm going to grab my hackle plier. I'm going to try and get all this stuff kind of out of the way, because I don't want it wrapped forward with my hackle. Grab that, and I think I'm going to go back just a little ways. And I don't want that hackle to twist on me while I'm wrapping it. So I want to keep it kind of straight so that it's all going on there nice and straight. Try to make those wraps the same distance apart on each one. And if I can get away with it, I might put an extra wrap at front. And that stuff is going to want to kind of jam up on you. I'm going to try and tease that through. Don't want to grab any of my vertical hackle while I'm doing this. And now that I've got that, I'm going to try and trim that. Get that out of the way. And you can tell, see, I've got a bunch of hackle that's kind of balled up in front of the eye. That's not a big problem. If you'll kind of wet your fingertips, grab all those, pull them back, you can add those to the body of your fly if you're careful. And if that doesn't work, you can always trim one or two. And I'm going to try and whip finish this off, and I will be trimming some of those. Put about 3 wraps of whip finish on it. Get rid of my thread. And sometimes you can kind of mash those strays back, and if they don't mash back, and sometimes they don't, I've got mine to where they pretty much got them all mashed back. They're going back. And there is my Christmas color woolly bugger. Now, I think you're going to find when you get this far, leave the fly in your vise for the next step. And I'm going to wait till everybody's ready to try this hanging process before we start.